Good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is the pre-show for Verticals podcast, episode 82. Bit of a pre-show here. I know the stream on YouTube. If you're listening to this on the YouTube side, um, we're supposed to go live at 2:30. I'd say approximate time. We don't always go live at 2:30 specifically, but just an approximate time. Sometimes we go a little bit earlier, a little bit later than that, but generally it's in the ballpark of 2:30, at least today in this point. But whenever you put the stream up, it's been live, or the stream was formed last night, so it was, you know, up there last evening, and for much of the day today. But again, like I said, this is the pre-show. This is not the actual show. So if you are wondering where the actual show is, move the slider on the bottom of the screen just a little bit, and we'll get started here in just a second. Got the code sent out to the YouTube side of things. So we'll wait a couple minutes here, and then we will get started. Got a big show today. Very big show. Now, if you're wondering on the pre-show, of course, this is not going to be the official show. I have not started the recording just yet for Spotify. The fan is back. Moved a little bit so it can blow on me. Of course, living here in Florida, here in Jacksonville, it's pretty warm. It was it's cooled down a little bit because we had a cold front moving in yesterday, but it's not cooled us down too much. It's still pretty warm out. Of course, it is, March 27th, I believe. Is that correct? March 20? Yeah, March 27th. And, of course, down here in Florida, we only have two seasons. We have summer and spring. We don't really have a traditional winter down here. Of course, I say that, and we had snow back a couple months ago, just north of here in southeastern Georgia. So, but it is starting to warm up now. Of course, the pollen's been pretty bad. It's been dry up down here too, especially in North Florida. It's been pretty dry. Hopefully, that will change a little bit because we will get some weather, some storms potentially on Monday. In fact, a pretty significant severe weather situation could be happening across the southeast again. So, some questions about that. But yeah, it's been warm here the past couple of days, and I believe next week, checking those long range forecasts, but a week from today, when we'll be doing the show, be near 90 up here. I think some areas down to the south in like Miami and Orlando will be in the 90s. So how about that? Summer has arrived. Though I don't quite think we're something cold yet or cooler weather. We'll see. It's usually around April 15th is when good date to sort of gauge when the cold weather will stop. So hopefully it won't be too much longer that we will be dealing with the cold snaps. I would assume by then we should be done with them, but who knows? But yeah, gonna get started here in just a second. We'll transition from the pre-show to the main show here. Yeah, got a lot to talk about. This might be a long show. Who knows? We got spring intel. The Avengers Doomsday cast was released yesterday, and some Q&A as well. So I'm going to get started here on the Spotify version on the recording. And in 3, 2, 1. And welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. This is Four Verticals Podcast, episode 82. That's right, 82. Getting so closer to episode 100. Thank you so much for tuning into the show today. Got a loaded show. Got Avengers Doomsday casting announcements yesterday. Yes, that rumored Marvel announcement that was going around the internet on Tuesday. And Tuesday afternoon, Tuesday evening did come to fruition. And we got some stuff to talk about on that side of things. So that'll be leading the show today. Got spring intel, sort of a second part to the Doomsday casting announcement yesterday that I will talk about. It's more of a broader situation, if you will, with Marvel marketing. And I got some Q&A as well. So how about that? Got a couple of questions to answer. If you are new here, we know a lot of folks, we're not a big show. We're not the best college football show, or for that matter, pop culture show or anything like that. But we tend to understand that a lot of new folks are coming in. We've only been around for just a little bit less than a year. We're getting close to the 1 year anniversary, and we only have 4 subscribers, but we are still growing. So we had asked you, ask you, if you are new here, if you happen to stumble upon the podcast version on Spotify, perhaps, or maybe you're wandering around the internet, you see our stream here on YouTube, because we are live on YouTube right now. Make sure you subscribe. It's pretty simple. We're not asking that much. We're only asking you just to hit the subscribe button on either Spotify or YouTube, and just make sure you do that. You don't have to click the notification bell. You don't have to. It's not required. Personally, for me, I don't do that for most of my channels I follow because I check daily. But if you are new here, make sure you are. If you're not new, and if you're one of the 4 subscribers, just make sure you check. Nothing wrong with checking. Sometimes I forget. There are certain shows where I forget. I watch religiously, and I don't realize I'm not subscribed. So just make sure you do that. Again, we do this show Tuesday and Wednesday throughout the week. Certain times, usually in the afternoon or even sometimes in the morning. It just depends. Weather permitting, though, especially during hurricane season, if there's a storm system coming in, tropical system coming in, and it's affecting where I'm at here in Florida, then we will move the show accordingly. Or if there's like a holiday I have scheduled or things going on, then we'll move the show around. But usually 2 shows per week. I think during the summer maybe we'll start doing 3. I don't know. We'll see on that. But welcome in. This is gonna be a loaded show. This one's gonna be a lot of fun. So again, make sure you do those things, and we'll be fine. So I'm gonna get some water real quick, and then we will formally get started here with a pretty significant show here. So I'm gonna get some water, and then we'll commence the show. Okay. So as I mentioned on the Tuesday show, I think it was in the middle of the show, that there were reports out there that a Marvel announcement was incoming. Pretty reliable people, Chris Gorman in particular. Now, I didn't know about this until Josh over at Den Verge brought this up on his show, or not on his show Tuesday, but in the afternoon on Twitter when I was scrolling, that someone had tweeted at him saying, hey, I was listening to Chris Gore, and he mentioned something about Marvel doing something on Wednesday, just to let you know about it. He tweeted at Josh the link to the YouTube stream and even the timestamp to where when Chris mentioned that, and that caught everyone's attention. In fact, it even surprised a lot of the typical social media scoopers and leakers, and they were even surprised by that. It was a bit of a surprise to everyone, except for those who had connections in the industry, which Chris Gore does. And look, everyone has their own opinions on certain people, their own opinions on certain tabloids or people who have industry connections, and that's fine. But Chris, very proven track record with certain things. He's very connected. Obviously, used to work in the movie industry, and he was correct. I'll give him credit where credit is due. He was definitely correct. There was something going on, and I think it caught a lot of folks off guard to a certain extent. But luckily, because of social media, we kind of knew this was coming, and we were checking from the morning yesterday, up to including me. Rumor was maybe early in the morning, and it became, or it was actually early in the morning Los Angeles time, but it was 11 a.m. East Coast time, New York time. So a bit of a loss in translation there. But anyway, the event kicks off. So it was a YouTube live stream, not a tabloid article. So not, from Hollywood Reporter or Variety, which I thought that was going to be something like that. I thought it was going to be just an article from the Hollywood Trades that was going to get published, and that was going to be some sort of casting announcements. And of course, we went over the possibilities on the Tuesday show, but it was an actual live stream. And of course, we can dive into the issues I have with it a little bit later in the show here. But the things that were announced, the actual things that were announced, which was the Doomsday cast, seemingly, and a lot of the usual suspects were there. Of course, we knew for a while it was going to be the Fantastic Four from the Fantastic Four movie that's coming out this summer. Will finally be joining the main cast of Avengers-esque characters in the main 616 universe. And we knew that was coming. We knew from the people like Alex Perez and My Time to Shine Hello and all these other Twitter X, if you will, social media leakers and scoopers, that this was going to happen. And it's been leaked for a long time. And even going back to multiple Comic-Cons ago, that this was going to happen. And there's the idea that the Fantastic Four from that movie that's coming out this summer will be in there. So we knew that wasn't a surprise when, they had Chris Hemsworth's chair, the actor's chair, which has now become an internet meme now. More on that later. Then we have Vanessa Kirby's chair, and then it just became more and more obvious that's what it was. That was a casting announcement for Doomsday. So, besides obvious stuff, as the event moved on, of course, we can talk about the mistakes and the disaster that it was from a marketing and a production standpoint. As the event went on, the 4 hours and 5 hours it was, I believe, 5 hours, we started to get more and more bigger names. Of course, we get Kelsey Grammer, who was in the Marvel's post-credit scene when Monica goes over to the other universe for the incursion. I'm trying to remember, was that actually identified as an incursion in the movie? I don't think it was. Yeah, I don't think it was identified, but the leakers and scripters have clarified and said that's exactly what it was, and we knew that going in before that was going to happen because of that. So he returns. Of course, he played Beast in the two of the X-Men movies. It wasn't the first one. It was in X3 and I believe Days of Future Past, if I recall correctly. I think it was in just the two. So then he gets announced, and a little bit later we get more of the characters we were expecting from the Avengers past Marvel movies. And then we start getting, Patrick Stewart and Ian McKellen and just more and more of these Fox X-Men characters from the OG movies, not the ones that were the, Bryan Singer. Well, not Bryan Singer. He did the originals, I believe. It was the Simon Kinberg era, if you will. Those era movies with McAvoy and Fassbender. Not them, and I think it's pretty clear they're not being included in Secret Wars and Doomsday. I think it's made pretty clear they will not be showing up. I know some folks have attachment to those films, and I'm not saying those films are bad. I mean, Days of Future Past is probably the best representation of X-Men on screen we've really gotten. That one, and I believe the second X-Men movie. Haven't watched a lot of these in a while. I've watched most of them. I didn't watch Our Dark Phoenix because that movie was a disaster. There were rumors going up to that, but yeah. So the later, younger X-Men cast that were in First Class, they're not going to be in this at all for various reasons. So once the stream ended, I think it was pretty clear what this is going to be. The X-Men characters from the universe that Monica Rambeau goes into at the end of the Marvels movie with Beast, and when Charles is mentioned. And by the way, this is not the 838 universe either. This is totally separate, I believe. I think that's been the case for a while. There was some confusion as to what was going to be the X-Men characters in this movie. Was it going to be from the 838 or this new universe that we've recently seen? And it turns out it's the other, not the first. But no, that was cool to finally get that stuff confirmed again. For a long time, I think a lot of folks were expecting this to happen, multiverse stuff. So it's nice to get, some of the classic actors coming back and playing these characters. I think it's great that we're getting that. Now, I did want to touch on this just a little bit. In terms of the characters who were not mentioned, there's a whole lot who were not mentioned, surprisingly, to a certain extent, because a lot of these characters were, I think a lot of folks are assuming we were going to be in it, and some of them were even leaked in the concept art for more than likely Secret Wars, but I think also Doomsday as well. Think about, Benedict Cumberbatch, Doctor Strange, Elizabeth Olsen as Wanda Maximoff, Tom Holland as Spider-Man, Hugh Jackman, Wolverine on in there mysteriously, and Ryan Reynolds. Though that one, the Reynolds thing makes sense given his wife, and there's a whole situation with her and a movie she was in. I'm sure most of you probably know about that. So him not being included just from a legal situation, I think it's unfortunately kind of reasonable to not include him yet. Once that situation gets resolved, I think he'll be more open about it, and I'm sure they will announce him along with the others, and I'll get that in just a second. But the others who are not mentioned were the other OG Avengers, like Hawkeye, and I think that's the only one from the current ones who are still around. But your Scarlett Johansson's, your Chris Evans, Mark Ruffalo too was not mentioned either. And I think what's happening here, why they were not mentioned, again, the Ryan Reynolds thing's a little bit different. But your Hugh Jackman, Chris Evans, those other legacy characters here from the Avengers or X-Men were not mentioned, is I think frankly they wanted to get the other heavy hitters, not the obvious ones, out of the way first, along with your current players in the main MCU 616. But I think those other castings, so like your Wanda Maximoff, Wanda Maximoff, those characters, Hulk, Wolverine, Doctor Strange, Spider-Man, I think those will be announced at a later date. I would reasonably assume probably around Comic-Con, or probably assume Comic-Con, as we will probably get that announcement of the other cast members. Because if you notice, it's been going around on social media throughout today and even yesterday that Marvel Studios their official Instagram account commented on Robert Downey Jr.'s post, I believe on Instagram, and they said, "Hey, there's always room for more." And I think that's obviously hinting at by the time we get to Comic-Con, they will have announced the other characters are appearing. Because I think the original rumor from Jeff Snyder when the event got started, he mentioned this on Twitter. He even appeared or had was called in actually during Christian Harloff's stream. Now, of course, Harloff had to go off and go do something else. He was, still working, and that's part of the. We'll touch on that again later with the issues that were taking place yesterday. But Jeff Snyder even reported that he had heard around 45 to 50 characters would be announced yesterday. Now, we didn't get that far. It was around 30, I believe, or 27 to 30. So there's still about 20 or so characters that we do not know that will be appearing in this movie officially. Again, I think some of those, your Mark Ruffalo, Benedict Cumberbatch, Elizabeth Olsen, Tom Holland, those will be probably announced in Comic-Con. During Comic-Con, I think they will probably do that more formally. Now, they won't probably be there because they'll be still filming, but I think with Comic-Con coming up, they can probably do that. Maybe have maybe like a concept art, maybe officially being released. And here's something else to also to sort of bring up is there's been a rumor going around. Of course, we've talked about a little bit here, but I don't think we've mentioned it a whole lot. Is that the rumor going around, or the leak, or whatever term you want to use, of Doctor Doom, of course, being played by RDJ, using evil versions of the OG Avengers, so like an evil version of Black Widow, Hawkeye, Hulk, probably Maestro Hulk, the Hydra version of Captain America, which is from the comics, by the way, just so everyone's aware of that. That's been rumored for a long time, and I think with those other OG characters or actors and characters, with the exception of Robert, being announced yesterday or being included in the video, leads me to believe, and just baseless speculation here, just me sort of fanboy dreaming here, is it possible that they could announce the OG Avengers and sort of confirming that idea that they are bringing in evil versions of the Avengers going against the current Avengers and some of the X-Men that are being included? That why not show that off and bring in some concept art and officially reveal that and whatnot? I think that's probably going to happen. I'll be surprised if it doesn't, because that rumor, again, it's coming from a lot of reliable people. I think Alex Perez has been the one that's been really parading that for a while, and he's pretty plugged in, just as anyone. And again, just from that alone, the fact they weren't included leads me to believe they will do something for Comic-Con that will sort of reveal even more characters and actors and whatnot, and they will probably show off some art, probably no footage. That wouldn't surprise me if they do, because they've been filming, I think, since yesterday or even the day before. And could they show something during Comic-Con? Of course, that's long ways from now. That's like right around, getting close to when media days for football will be going on. But it wouldn't surprise me to have some footage that will just be privately shown to the audience there. And of course, it'll link online. Of course it will. But I think from an official standpoint, I think a first poster probably be released, and then, or like a teaser poster maybe, and then more likely some concept art officially probably on their social accounts, and maybe like a video from the cast over there, maybe some behind the scenes stuff. But yeah, just from an announcement standpoint, again, nothing wrong, nothing to do with the production or how it is presented or the marketing. We'll deal with that in a little bit. But just from a, announcing stuff, I think it was pretty good. Building up to the OG X-Men and some of the other surprise characters and some of the Thunderbolts characters too, by the way, who were announced. And I think a lot of folks, to a certain extent, were pointing us out, even including me, were like, man, Marvel's kind of spoiling the Thunderbolts. Now, granted, it's not a surprise that much. We were hearing some rumors about certain characters like, Yelena and Bucky were probably going to survive. So not too much of an issue with that. I think some folks had more of an issue with it. With me, I didn't have an issue with it. Generally, I think on Twitter, what I posted there was just more of observant. But whatever. Again, there's a lot of other stuff too about why they decided to announce the Thunderbolts characters who were going to survive before the movie comes out. I'll deal with that more with the marketing side of things and the behind the scenes issues. But again, from an announcement standpoint, just from what is announced, solid. I think pretty good. I think it got the job done. They clearly dominated the hot headlines yesterday. I think a lot of folks were having some fun with it. Again, grant you, we'll deal with the other side of this, the uglier side. But again, from just an announcement standpoint, you're bringing back some of the OG, the real OG X-Men. I think from that standpoint, it was a good job. I think I would give this an A-. I think from a announcement standpoint, you certainly won the headlines yesterday, and you certainly won over the internet. But from a marketing standpoint, from a production standpoint, from a presentation standpoint, I think we can. There are certainly some issues there, and we'll address those a little bit later. But yeah, that was the huge news, and it wasn't necessarily the gravitas of a RDJ as Doctor Doom necessarily. It wasn't. Let's just say what it is. And look, I'm not blaming Chris Gore on that. I think what he heard, what he said was not himself, not his own opinion. That was just what he was told from a source, and his source is whoever told him that maybe should have phrased it a little bit better. But he was right, so give Chris some credit there for accurately reporting that and getting it out beforehand. And how about that? Yesterday, 5 hours of content yesterday. So, again, we'll go over the issues. And look, trust me, there's a whole lot of issues. But as we tend to do here on this show, whether it's, reviewing TV shows or movies or whatever, even up into including college football games and, sort of reacting to those and giving our thoughts on it, always stick to the positive first, and then we'll go to the negative, or in college football's case, losers. Will always come second. So, yeah, Doomsday cast announcement. Very nice to finally have some of that stuff confirmed. And, again, I firmly believe we will get more and more things revealed probably by the time Comic-Con comes around or during it. By the way, too, I should mention this as we sort of transition here. CinemaCon is starting next week. So that's something I didn't realize. I may have mentioned it on the show Tuesday. But that also might be a reason why they got this out ahead of time, because they may also discuss some of this stuff too during that, because Disney will have a panel there, and that includes Marvel. So yeah, that's out. That's interesting too. That's also happening next week, and just works out that this announcement happened the week before. So how about that? Also, wouldn't be surprised if you get some Superman stuff too. There's some rumors and potential them showing off maybe like 20 minutes in the movie or so. I think James Gunn will probably be there, but if something happens there, we'll talk about it on the show. All right, we'll get some water real quick, and we'll move into some spring intel, just some general stuff here. Of the some teams, you got 3 teams mentioned here, and then we'll move on to the other side of the announcement yesterday, and we'll move into some Q&A. Probably more of a shorter show today. Maybe we'll see. I've said that. I've said that before, and then lo and behold, we end up going for an hour. Anyway, spring intel. Yes, we have some thoughts here. Again, as you know, a lot of these schools have started for spring practice. Some have started earlier than others. Some started this week. So a lot of this information is still kind of trickling in. Hopefully by next week we'll have more of a rolling snapshot of more reasonable information, or at least information that's more juicy than we have currently. Some of this is still thoughts, but things I'm looking for as we go throughout spring. First up here is FSU, Florida State. Last year famously or infamously going 2-10 after going 13-1. Looking forward to the offense here. I think that's the big thing here. And look, I understand a lot of folks have questions about Mike Norvell and his future there, and bringing in Gus Malzahn and them, making some changes here, and it's more of a urgency situation. It's more of trying not to get fired here, both Mike Norvell and the whole staff, and up and including Mike Alford, the athletic director out there, which he's also on the hot seat a little bit too. I think it's been pretty evident from guys like Bud Elliott and a lot of other Florida State folks. The sentiment is things go south this year. Not only is the entire football staff out, but also would imagine Mike Alford's days are outnumbered at that point, and he's probably on his way out as well. If that happens, if it doesn't happen, then everything's fine, and he'll be there for a little bit. But the thing I'm looking forward to with their spring practice, I think some of the things I'm hearing as well, is that they're trying to install this offense. Now, is it going to be different than the Norvell stuff versus what you're doing with Malzahn? Not really. It's mostly the same. more run element stuff. The thing with Malzahn, book on him is, he has to rely on a mobile quarterback, a runner and quarterback skill set is required there. We've seen multiple examples at Auburn, more famously of him trying to use more balanced-esque pocket passer type quarterbacks in a system. It just doesn't work out. We have seen time and time again where that has not worked out. Sean White, Jeremy Johnson, Jared Stidham, it has never materialized where you can use a non-dual threat quarterback, or at least a guy who can run a little bit. Now, Jared Stidham could run, but we're talking about the Jeremy Johnsons of the world and the Sean Whites. The problem with Sean White was really small. It was like 6 foot, really thin, pretty fragile. If you did not remember, he got hurt a lot during his time there on the plains. On the plains. So that's what I'm looking for at Florida State. The install. Will we see any improvement offensively? Is there? If Castellano is coming in, is he better than what you had? Last year with DJ Ewens and these other quarterbacks he had on the roster. They've ran off Crimin Hoke, who was a former 4-star, 5-star kid. He's at Ole Miss now, or not Ole Miss, at Mississippi State. Is that a mistake? Is that a more of a reflection of, again, Malzahn more relying on a true runner versus more of a balanced quarterback? We'll see. Texas A&M is an interesting one here. I think everyone up until including me has been more in a way looking at offense for them. I'm actually more worried about. I'm not worried, but just interested in defense, right? You bring in Mike Elko, a defensive-minded guy. Of course, Colin Klein's the OC. I'm interested to see how their defense improves. And they got better at times last year, but you had certain games, the South Carolina game and the Auburn game come to mind where defense failed them. They did not do well defensively in both of those games. Those ended up being losses for them. The Auburn game being between the 2 losses towards the end of the year is more embarrassing. Do ignore to the construction noises. They're doing some work here in my apartment, if you haven't heard. They're putting in new screens or something, I believe, towards the bottom there. So if you hear equipment down there and then, hammering and stuff, then that's what it is. But, I think A&M is just defense. Again, they really did well in the portal. They got some good guys from a, depth standpoint, some good pieces. But just defensively, I want to see some more effort there. Again, from someone like Mike Elko, who again is a defensive-minded coach, being a D coordinator, would like to see defense improve a little bit. Again, there's times where it did pretty well last year or did fairly well. I think the LSU game is more of an example of that, or the best example of that in Notre Dame. But from a consistent effort, I think is what I'm looking for. Again, the South Carolina Auburn games, I think are the ones where if you're an A&M fan, you kind of go, oh man, if we just had a better effort defensively, where you just had different things fall into place there. Maybe we didn't get injured on this side of the ball more, or that side of the ball a bit more. Maybe we could have been a lot better of a season. But that's the one I have my ear towards the ground, if you guess, in terms of getting information from there. So that's what I'm looking forward to this spring. Is just what guys can step up on defense, what guys are actively performing consistently, if you will, defensively for A&M. Because I think offensively, if Marcel Reed and Colin Klein, I believe he is indeed back. I believe. Let me actually check here. I don't think he went anywhere. Could be wrong. Yes, he is still there. So, of course, you have Jay Bateman's there for a second year. So, mainly the whole staff is mostly the same. And their schedule, too, it starts off with you have your in-state Texas school and UTSA, Utah State. You have 2 G5s, and then you have Notre Dame on the road. So, you have a couple of games to get yourself ease yourself into things, and then you have Notre Dame and in week 3 on the road. And then Auburn comes to town week or so after. There's a bye week in between. So you don't have a lot of time to get things figured out if you have to do that in fall camp. So hopefully defensively, you can look at the numbers too. And you just go back to last year. You have several games where the defense for you just did not help you. The bowl game against USC, Carolina, Auburn, some of the other games too. And look, it's not like the whole defense the entire time was horrible. It was not. There was certainly a stretch there where they were pretty efficient defensively for a lot of the season. But towards the end there, it's, the Auburn game and you have the Texas game where, sure, it was 17 points, but didn't look good. The game against South Carolina in the bowl game, would like to see a better effort consistently throughout the entire year. I think that's all we're asking for if I'm an A&M fan, knowing that Again, Mike Elko's background being a DC, and of course his defenses at Duke, when he was head coach there for 2 years, were quite good to a certain extent, given Duke's talent level. That's all I'm asking for. That's all I'm asking for. Just more consistency on defense. I think offense. I think Elko has shown he is not a Muschamp clone, where he completely does not discard offense. He's actually embraced it and brought in a really good offensive coordinator. And I think if Marcel Reed and some of the guys they brought in, especially at receiver and upgrades, that side of the football I'm not worried about. It's the defensive side. I would like to see some improvement there, just more consistency. Then the last one, there's Penn State. Don't talk a lot about Penn State here. I mean, we should. I mean, we talked a lot about them last year. But Penn State, I'm curious here what the offense will look like. Again, second year under Andy Kotelnicki. I think the big question here is, will Drew Allar take another step? And we mentioned this back on the questions, but some things I'm looking forward to even now with them beginning spring practices. Drew Allar, does he take the next step? Can they get more out of him than he got last year? And I think last year, up until before the playoff, the postseason, I don't think I had an issue with Drew Allar. Now, some folks personally who have talked to you about this, they do not like him, Drew Allar. They think he's not NFL material, contrary to what other folks were saying, the experts, if you will. So, again, I'm not dishing anyone who hates Drew Allar. You can have your own opinions and stuff, but just from what I've seen of him last year, we can bring the numbers too. I can look them up right here online. So, I can go to the old internet here and look up the stats, and I think they speak for themselves that they were not the complete garbage people perceive him to be. I think a lot of folks just assume that losing in the playoffs and having a horrible game in the playoffs means that you're an idiot and you're stupid. I don't believe that. I think his touchdown to interception ratio in the past couple of years, 2023 and then 2024, it's really, really good. I mean, 25-2 and then 24-8. That's like as good as you can get. I mean, he's not someone who turns the ball over that much. Last year, he was more of the starter for the majority of the year. He was more healthy most of the time than the year before. So I don't know. Again, it's more of an issue of Penn State. This whole, them being Penn State against the entire world and the media. It seems like, but I have faith in them. I have faith in Drew Allar. Yes, would I like to see him take another step and at least be more consistent? Sure, I would definitely like that. Again, his overall stats here, I think, speak for themselves. They're not total garbage. I mean, like 66.5% completion percentage, 8.4 yards per average, and then that touchdown interception ratios. That's pretty good. That's winning numbers. That's not, that's not terrible numbers. And I think a lot of folks who you talk to or who you may talk to, even listen to a certain extent, wherever you listen to, will try to sell it to you that Drew Allar is a shitty quarterback and he's in their words, a piece of garbage. He is not garbage. He's not far from garbage. Now, is he a Lamborghini? If we're going to use the car analogy here, no, he's not that. He's somewhere in between, or it's not even in between. He's somewhere in the tier 2 realm where he's quite good. He's not an elite. He's quite good. And for Penn State, that's not bad. I mean, look, they brought back the majority of their offense. Now, sure, you're losing Tyler Warren. That's not something to sneeze at. That's a big deal. They need also, and that's the second part here, is they need receivers who step up there. They really need that. Maybe I'm trying to remember here. I don't think they got anyone significant out of the portal this time around. They got wide receiver Kyron Hudson from USC, and they got the kid from Troy. That's good if you're just winning depth, but I think they need certainly better talent there, and hopefully they can get that. There's certainly guys there, they recruit pretty well. They certainly have utilized the portal to their ability, but we'd just like to see them to have a receiver step up. Whoever that is, we'll see. I mean, that's why they have spring and fall camp to determine that. But it's just a weird feeling too with Penn State. It's like the vibes they go with Penn State, even before they play games. It's just like it's just them being Penn State versus the media. And it's just insanity. And me, Josh Pate, and Curve, they do to a certain extent. We're not against them. We're pro Penn State. I'm a huge fan of James Franklin. I think what he's done there throughout his entire career has been quite good. And eventually we'll do our coaching power rankings and power rankings or tier list or whatever for this year at some point. We'll eventually do all that. But he's a good coach. I mean, again, what he did at Vanderbilt obviously deserves a statue. I'm surprised they haven't done it yet because he's won back-to-back 9-win seasons, being ranked, something they have not done before that, and have not done since. And what he's doing at Penn State has been the best in my lifetime. I mean, the tail end of the Joe Paterno era, outside of the whole scandal up there, was nothing to write home about. So, I don't know. Just again, there's some things I want to see him to do, or want to see Penn State do. Again, seeing Dreller take that extra step. Again, he's not garbage. He's not complete trash. And also just want to see someone on the offense, other than the running backs, being receiver, just to step up. So I'm wanting to see. I think hopefully we're going to get that, at least not at the very least in the spring. More likely probably by the time we get the fall camp. That's our little spring intel wraparound. Of course, hopefully by next show we'll have a little more bone to chew on, I guess. I mean, it's hard enough where I don't have access to these fan sites or whatever. Excuse me, a burp there. I don't have access to some of these sites because they do cost money, which, whatever, that's fine. You gotta make money somehow. But someone who's, can't really afford to pay for all of these sites, it's kind of hard to get information unless you just follow the individual YouTube channels. So hopefully by the next show, we'll have a little bit more to discuss, because information free on the internet is pretty scarce to find. So get some water real quick here, and then we will dive into our next segment. Then we'll do some Q&A, and then we'll probably get out of here a little bit earlier than scheduled. So moving for a shorter show today, but I'm wrong of that. By the way, if you have not subscribed yet, as mentioned earlier, please do so. If you still have not done it yet. If you're still listening to this, you're on the podcast feed or on the replay on YouTube or even live, but no one's listening to us live right now, so more likely on the replay. Make sure you subscribe. It's pretty simple. Again, just make sure you click the button. That's all you have to do. If you have hands, if you don't, then God bless you. That's tough. If you're able to, do so. Just subscribe. Just click the button. Again, don't have to click on the notification bell or get notifications. That's up to you. I'm not requiring you to do that. But what I am requiring you to do, or just asking you nicely, to subscribe to the podcast feed and to the YouTube channel. Again, we are keeping this free. We're independent. We have never been approached by advertisers or any big corporate conglomerate. It's just us. It's me and my little makeshift studio here. That's just us. I'm literally my own host, my show's host, HR person, publicist, all of that. I hold all the hats here, so it's just me. And for a lot of us independent creators, that's it. We are literally our own everything. I don't even have an editor, which is totally cool. With technology these days, it would have been harder to probably do this a long time ago, especially with things that are free. But with the advent of stuff like things that we use like StreamYard and YouTube, and being able to use Spotify, and anyone can do their own podcast now. It's so much easier now. You don't even have to use a traditional editor anymore. So, but hopefully someday we will get to that point where we are quite big. Quite big, and who knows? Maybe we will get a bigger following. Again, we're not the best college football show, but we are certainly one of the youngest ones. We are. We are about to be 1 year old. So. And we're just under 100 episodes. So I wanted to touch on this a little bit. I teased this at the beginning. We were talking about the Doomsday casting stuff. Again, from an announcement standpoint yesterday, the things that Marvel were announcing with the cast, I have no problem with. Again, I thought that was an A- job. You did a pretty solid job of doing that. The overall marketing and presentation of it was complete garbage. No doubt about it. It was complete garbage. The fact that you had... And again, look, I know Marvel and Disney, and we'll see if they release numbers and stuff through their methods and stuff. You can find it if you want to. You can just search it. But eventually they will bring this up about their numbers and how many what was their traction, the analytics and stuff, and how much engagement they were getting. I think at one point, like 5 million people were at one point watching, if you will, the Twitter or X stream, which is inflated, by the way. The way X does it, it's not consistent viewers, it's just people who have either who saw the stream or were on there for whatever amount of time before. They're the entire time or like 5 minutes or so. Like they literally track all that. So that the numbers there are a little more inflated, if you will. The actual stream on YouTube, when I was live, when I was hopping in and out of the stream, was around like 40,000 at least. So it was doing decent enough numbers. So look, from that standpoint, they did a good job doing that. I think if you're looking at this from a positive standpoint, we'll get the negatives here in just a second. But I guess the only reason two reasons here, I could only see them doing this. I guess one's more positive than the other. I guess the positive one would be, hey, we're doing this announcement. Why not just draw this out? It means we'll get more viewers because it'll be going on for a long time. It'll keeping everyone guessing on what shares me next and whatnot. So if that is the more positive reason why, then okay. The second reason, this is something, and I was listening to Josh over at them earlier on his stream, and he mentioned this being a potential motive is to potentially piss off the content creators. He's just kind of wary about this. He didn't want to go into it fully because it sounded like he had conversations, if you will, with certain people. But he touched on it a little bit briefly during his show about, hey, there's this sentiment that maybe, Marvel did this sort of spite content creators and made it literally impossible to cover this. Remember, this was a 5-hour stream, and they did, this like 12 or 14-minute interval of the chairs, and they'll play the theme music and stuff. And it was sort of, like I mentioned earlier, with someone like Christian Harloff, who was streaming during this, and he got on and he thought, oh, this will be a, mentioned on the stream yesterday, hey, I thought this was going to be a really, it's a quick stream and less than an hour. Then it turns out it's like a 5-hour thing, and he couldn't stay on the entire time. He had one of his other co-hosts, Winston, had to come on and take over. He's had to go do something else. And I think that's the one first problem here is that these people have jobs. Like, Christian, me, we have things we were doing yesterday. And I think Marvel, I don't know why in the world would they reasonably assume someone would be sitting at their computer 5 hours throughout the day just looking at this. I mean, you could have very easily got on the their Avengers Doomsday Wikipedia page last night and got all the information you needed. But going back to Josh's theory here about why Marvel would have done this, it's he thinks they're doing it despite content creators, making it very tough for them to make content. And I think there's a growing sentiment and a growing, like a growing or festing feeling that they do not like when people talk about this stuff, or stuff meaning leaks or rumors. I don't think the studio likes it. I totally understand that, and it's their own opinion to feel that way. It's their right to feel that way. But as a content creator, much like Josh of Damn Nerds and some of these other people like Harloff and Eric Voss at New Rock Stars, and channels like Emergency Awesome and Heavy Spoilers and people like that, and Screen Crush, Ryan Area, yesterday was just so tough to cover that. It was really hard. And I mentioned on Tuesday, look, if something happened, I would maybe do a video. There was no way I was doing a video for a stream that was going on for literally 5 hours. It's like my head yesterday was like, if I did a video during this, I would literally just be talking about information that was old, and then a new piece of information would probably pop in as soon as I was done recording. So it wasn't worth it doing anything yesterday. I was more worth it just to go on today and talk about it. But yeah, just from a marketing standpoint, again, this is not the first time this has happened to Marvel this year. I mean, this year in general, with some of their marketing and PR and sort of presentations, from a presentation standpoint, it's been bad. They've had multiple misses. The Fantastic Four trailer announcement stream, where I was like, the stream starts at this time, then it's like, oh, we have to wait for folks to get in, and it's like a waiting room thing. You have to wait another hour. It's like, you could have just said that before, and no one have an issue with it, but they fooled you that time. And then the whole, presentation, I don't know, like interview thing was weird to begin with. It was like a weird simultaneously being streamed on YouTube and on ABC's Good Morning America, and that's kind of strange and whatnot. And then they had the Captain America clips, Captain America Brave New World, that the clips are released, and granted the movie was garbage anyway, but the clips they released were garbage to begin with. So already there's a red flag of that. But it's just in general, just their whole marketing tactics, the ones they have used this year so far in 2025, just been horrible. It's just not been good enough. I guess the next question here, what would be things that would have changed yesterday? Maybe as someone who, like me, who's studied public relations and I've done some marketing stuff and I've gone through the classes and have a degree in it. I think a lot of you guys who are listening to this maybe wondering yourself, what would I do differently? Tough. I mean, obviously I wouldn't do what I did yesterday because that's stupid. Again, just from an aspect of the general fan, not these YouTube content creators. Even that's a challenge in itself. But if you were just a fan yesterday, think about this. If you were a fan yesterday, knowing that this stream was going to go on for a whole long time, and you were hearing maybe some of the stuff I were about, the 50 or so actors who are going to be announced during this, and they're doing it again, these 15 to 14-minute intervals, and it's, very elongated and boring live stream. How do most of you feel about that? I'm sure most of you didn't like that. I even saw it as much in the live chat yesterday in the official Marvel stream. It was not a good sentiment. And I think what I've done differently to avoid that and to avoid having people's normal days being interrupted and production coming to a halt for most of the country, or for those of you who are interested in this, I would have done this a lot differently. I would have done maybe, I don't know, like a pre-recorded video of, maybe you brought in the Russo brothers before they started production and maybe talk about the cast and stuff like that. Maybe it's like a 30-minute video that maybe sets their mirror on it. Something like that would have been a lot better than this, because it would have given us, both the general audience and the content creators who follow this as a hobby or a job to a certain extent, given information so much quicker and more efficient versus just being drawn out. Again, I think my theory is more likely that this was just done to stretch out the engagement and get better views and stuff. But you're sacrificing views and engagement for people's time. That's the big issue I have with this, and that to me why I thought this was garbage and completely mishandled. Now, if you're looking at it from the other perspective, from what Josh over at Den of Nerds brought up today, that hey, there could be this other alternative motive to where maybe they're doing this to piss off the content creators, make it real difficult for them to cover this. If that's the case too, that's also garbage. I'll sort of echo what he said earlier on this show, that content creators, love them or hate them, are sort of an extension of your marketing. Like they're the people who break down the trailers and do theory videos and do the Easter egg stuff, and they're the ones who point out all this stuff, and make these connections. Guys again like Ryan Airy and Eric Voss are sort of the ones that them and Emergency Awesome sort of been doing that for a long time and been the pioneers of that. Those channels like that and content creators like that are an extension of your marketing. They are, whether you like it or not, whether you like those guys or you like the fact that they're mentioning, rumors and stuff like that, and they're going over the leaks and stuff, and the concept art that was released a while ago. And here's another thing too, if that is true, and that is them doing what they did yesterday, and the way that was formatted was to piss off those people and to make it really difficult for them to cover this. If that was done also as a sort of retaliation to them covering the concept art, that's also garbage. That's also BS. Because what happened with the concept art was an accident. That was not intentional for them to cover that stuff. Because it's like, what else were they supposed to do? Like, what else was, Ryan Airy, Josh over Nerds, Emergency Ops, like, what were they supposed to do? Not talk about it? Of course they're going to talk about it. Of course they're going to. They're not going to shut them up. So, again, that was a disaster from a marketing standpoint. There's been several examples of that. Hopefully, they will fix this. They will learn from this. And look, they probably won't, because they'll trot out the numbers later today or whenever they announce it and go, well, we got 10 million viewers on Twitter yesterday. Congratulations. I got water from my fridge today. Good. Congratulations. Glad you feel that way. Just frustrates me being a content creator and also someone who has been in the PR and communication world. Yes, I get how engagement's important. It is important. I've seen numbers before. I've looked at, papers about, fan engagement and, during my various internships and looking at, the spreadsheets and the number crunching and stuff like that and operating social media accounts. I totally understand that engagement's important and getting, people to view your stuff and, winning the headlines and trending on social media. That's fine. But if you're doing this to spite off other content creators who are an extension of your marketing, that's bullshit. I don't cuss on this show this much, but that's bullshit. That's BS. And Josh over at Den of Nerds has called you out for it, and I'll do it too. That's crap. So if you really did that to piss off a lot of people, up to including people like me, because you're drawing it out because let's just piss them off. They're giggling behind the scenes because remember gonna really piss those people off to make this really 5 hours long. Well, I'll tell you what, give them credit where credit's due. Those folks over at New Rockstars and the Break Room channel, they're on for 5 hours. Christian Harloff, even though he wasn't on there the entire time, his stream was also 5 hours, and he eventually came back after he was done what he was doing. So you may have tried to do that. You may have tried to knock down those content creators, but some of them still did it. So they're still there and they're still talking about it. So whatever alternative motives you may have had to derail their fun and my fun as well, you failed. If that's the case. Now, if that's not the case, then whatever. And this segment's redundant. But if what Josh over there is saying is true, and this sort of growing sentiment of Marvel having this sort of rift, if you will, between them and the content creators that, again, like I said, are an extension of your marketing, again, that's BS, and that's complete crap, and I hope they know that, because if that's the case, and that is what indeed is what is happening, then you are that's a very fine line to walk here, and I really hope that's not the case, and I really hope that that's not what happened yesterday. So that's it for my little soapbox. I didn't mean to go into a little tangent there, but it does infuriate me, and it does really round me up a little bit. And I totally understand why Josh brought it up really in his stream, because I totally think that there is a avenue to where that could be possible. Again, look, I don't have those same connections as he does. I don't have those same messages being sent to me. But if that's true, then that's pretty significant. That is that would be a pretty significant issue amongst the fan base. Because again, as an extension with those channels, they are a part of your marketing, and I think those folks over there know that, and they did this on purpose, and obviously they know that. But still, just upsetting that's what happened. That if that is the case, and I'm really hoping that's not the case, and I'm really hoping this was just a miscalculation that they may have thought, hey, if we drag this out, that means we could get more engagement again. I'm really hoping that's the case, but it is the other alternative. It was a more of a alternative motive situation and more nefarious situation there to spite the content creators, and that's I and many others will not stand for that. So just letting you know, if you're listening to this, which I'm sure none of you are, but if you happen to ever listen to this stream, just letting you know, that's something that we as content creators and us who have access to a microphone and access to a YouTube account we will have issues with that. So we are aware of that, because people are actively having conversations about that. So I'm going to take a break here, get some water here, and then we'll do a couple of Q&A stuff here. Some pretty interesting news here that actually broke yesterday. So a couple of Q&A questions here, and then we'll wrap up the show here. Been going for over an hour here, so there goes us having a whole shorter show. I say that, and then here we are. So a question here, and this is something that I did not talk about on Tuesday's show purposefully, because of some of the things that were that sort of got put on the back burner. A question here, what do you think of Georgia's speeding situation and culture? So once again, last Friday or Saturday, that news broke that another one or two Georgia players were once again arrested for speeding, and that, of course, coincided with more culture questions and people calling out Kirby Smart and things like that. And look, I'm not a member of the Georgia football staff. I'm not a Georgia fan. I do not know Kirby Smart. He's not a friend. He's not a friend of the program. He's not going to message me after the show or anything. From what I can tell, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I think a lot of folks have given their piece on this, and frankly, I wasn't even going to include this because it's not a subject I really enjoy talking about, but I may as well discuss it here. And then this will probably be the last time I bring this up for a while, because I did this last time too. I think last summer. I don't believe there's a culture problem there. I just do not. There's no evidence of that. There's no indications of that. If there were, you would have seen a mass exodus of staffers and transfer portal players leaving There is no indication of that. Kirby Smart and them, from a culture standpoint, it's fine. There's nothing wrong. There's no problem with the culture. Now, is there a problem of speeding and it being a consistent issue and it becoming a more and more of a trend? Of course, there is a problem there, and hopefully at some point it'll stop. But I've been seeing a lot of folks, saying, "Oh man, Kirby Smart's not trying hard enough." No, Kirby Smart's an idiot. He's stupid. You don't know that. You don't know that Kirby Smart has not tried to do this. And I think Josh Pate mentioned this on the Sunday show, and I totally agree that I do firmly believe he has tried to stop this. I believe he has done various modes and tactics to try to prevent this from happening. I think even Josh Pate mentioned even back to last year saying that they've brought in someone from the sheriff's office, I believe. I don't know if it's correct or not, but someone from law enforcement has gone there to speak to the team at least once. And maybe that's not good enough. Again, I'm not in that position. At least I'm not in the position over there to make that determination. But I firmly believe they have tried to combat this. I believe there have been motive or at least tactics and things they've tried to do. Are they not good enough? I guess not. But to say Georgia's culture is bad, and to say, I've seen a lot of people comparing it to the Urban Meyer Florida Gators team, which was a bit of a weird situation with certain characters involved, and people bringing loaded guns to the Tampa airport. That also happened, by the way, if you don't remember. It's not that level of insanity, but still insane that we're having this happen. And again, I don't believe there's any issues with the Georgia culture. If there was, again, I believe you would see certain signs that, right? Coaches leaving, a mass exodus of players at the transfer portal. We would probably hear more stories about this officially. And all the things we have heard have mainly just been speeding. Players, doing this for, TikTok videos and doing it for social media and whatnot. So, no, there's no culture issue at Georgia. Is there a speeding issue? Of course, yes. I think that's stating the obvious there. So that's my thoughts on that whole situation. I was going to talk about it on Tuesday, but decided not to. One little question, and then we'll wrap up the show. Thoughts on Gary Danielson retiring next year from CBS? So this came out yesterday. Bit of a, I don't know if this was a bombshell, if you will, but interesting that it came out. Of course, Gary and Brad and Jenny Dale and company have not been covering games for the past few months because their time covering games has ended. That ended with the Sun Bowl. Of course, last year was their first year covering the Big Ten at a full because their SEC rights expired after 2023. It was announced yesterday from Gary Danielson himself in a press release that was put out on social media yesterday that he was retiring after this season. So this season, the 2025-2026 season will be his last year with the company. He'll be moving on. The replacement for him, by the way, is going to be Charles Davis. He's with Iron Eagle with the NFL. And it's also been announced, too, from the NFL side of things that J.J. Watt will be transitioning from the studio to calling games on the field or calling games in the booth. So he'll be replacing Charles. Charles will be going back to college football, where he was with Fox for a long time, him and Gus Johnson for a while, before he left for CBS back, I think, 10 years ago. So I had a lot of memories of Gary Danielson. I didn't know him personally. He's not from the program. At least I have memories watching him back, for him and Ferland Quist were doing the SEC games in the fall, 2:30 games. There's a lot of memories of him calling games. And I'm sure people's opinions of him have changed over the years of whether it's calling him an SEC homer or, saying he's too bland or anything. I didn't really get that. And look, I don't know him personally. I've never met him before. From what I've seen of him on, when he's been on different shows and, some of the things he's done on the air, it just seems like a very generic guy. He's very, very, very enjoyable to be around from what I've heard. He's a straight shooter. Very, very, from people I've heard, he's very impressive to talk to. Just seems like a very generic person. He's not a big personality. He's not a very, bombastic person. He's not a rude person from anything I've heard. And that's not the vibe we get from either. He seems like a very laid back person. He's very knowledgeable of the game. Again, like I said, I think I have a lot of different fan bases that different feelings towards him. Look, that's the beauty of college football, right? You can have your opinions of people, and it's not just exclusive to Gary either. There's been a lot of other announcers over the years, whether color guys or the main announcers, the guys who are calling the game, not former players, different various opinions from the public. But again, everything I've heard about Gary, him as a person, he's a very and a very impressive guy to be around. Very smart. Again, not a very bombastic person. Not a very big personality either in terms of being rude or anything. Seems like a very general person to be around. It'll be different. It'll be hard seeing him leave, and we'll be different. But it will also be nice to see Charles Davis come back to college football. Always enjoy, too, seeing people coming back to the sport. Always nice to see that. But, Gary, salute to you, my friend. Never knew you before or never met you before. But having listened to you and Vern and more recently Brad being there calling games on Saturdays and falls. It's going to be different, but we'll miss you, and you've had a great career, and I think you've deserved retirement. So hats off to you announcing that yesterday. I know it's going to be tough this year, because last year covering the sport, at least publicly, and I'm sure you'll still be around. I'm sure he'll still make the rounds on, radio and stuff. I'm sure he'll still be involved a little bit, but he'll be moving on, and salute to you. It's been an honor to be able to listen to you, Brad, and Vern Lundquist throughout the various years, and so during the fall. So just a little thoughts on Gary there. Again, never met him in person before. It'd be cool to maybe someday meet him and whatnot, be able to talk to him, and man, imagine the stories he could tell on a one-on-one sitting. Who knows? Maybe somebody will do that at some point once he's out there. And just think about that too. A lot of our, especially if you're around my age, a lot of our childhood announcers are gone. Of course, we lost Greg Gumbel this past a little while ago. He passed away recently. Of course, Vern retiring, Brent Musburger retiring. Now Gary Danielson's leaving us. He's not dead or anything. He's retiring. Of course, Jim Nance sort of transitioning to retirement now. He's no longer calling the NCAA tournament. He's also announced recently that he'll at some point, obviously, he'll stop doing NFL and the Masters. So it's bittersweet that we're losing a lot of our childhood nostalgic announcers and whatnot. But needless to say, who knows? Maybe the next generation of announcers will be too bad as well. So that's it for the show. They're more of a dreary end of the show there. But again, just make sure you subscribe. That's all we're asking for. We're to keep the show free, and we're independent. We're not a part of a media corporation or anything like that. It's just me. It's our YouTube channel. We own it. It's ours, and we would like to keep it that way. We would like to keep this show mostly sponsorless. Though if there is one sponsor we could ever get, it would be Yingling Beer. That would be the one we would like to get as a sponsor. So if you're listening, Yingling, if you're listening, handshake emoji. We would like to have you guys be our sponsor. The only one. That's the only one we would ever do if you ever got a sponsor on the show. That's it. We would never ever make this show filled with advertisement after advertisement after advertisement throughout an hour show. We never do that. And hopefully we'll mostly keep it that way. And again, the intent is to be independent. So that's our intent for the future. Again, back on Tuesday, hopefully some more spring intel as the first week of spring practices wraps up. We'll certainly get a lot more information, some more details on what information we can get there. Again, it's tough being someone who does not have access to a lot of these sports sites. So I have to get these from various different ways of information, methods, if you will, to get this information. So until Tuesday, probably in the afternoon as usual. For Verticals Podcast, episode 82. Again, getting ever so closely to that 100 episode. If we do, then which I'm assuming we are going to, then that'd be great when that does happen. Hopefully, once that gets closer, maybe we'll certainly make it a 100 episode special. But I don't know. We'll see. Just thinking out loud here. But again, until then, enjoy the rest of your weekend. Again, if you're in the southeast like myself, it's gonna be warm, so enjoy it. I know most of you will be dealing with storms on Sunday, but while you can, just enjoy it. I know the allergies and stuff, it's tough. Like the most of you, I'm with you on that. But nothing we can do about it. It's just the time of the year. It's the sign of the times, if you will. So until Tuesday, enjoy the weekend, take care, and we will see you guys on the next stream, which will be Tuesday. Take care, guys.